The fighter's control panel screamed warnings at Tae-hyun. Red lights blinked everywhere. The left engine was dead. The right one was dying. Below him, New Busan colony burned. He pushed the stick forward and dove toward the alien landing zone. His fighter shook violently. Metal groaned under stress. The alien ships below grew larger in his view. They looked like giant insects made of dark metal. Their weapons tracked his approach. Tae-hyun did not think about dying. He thought about the 3 transport ships he had just saved. Civilians. Children. They were escaping because he had bought them time. Now he would buy them more. The alien ground forces fired at him. Their weapons tore through his fighter's remaining shields. His cockpit filled with smoke. The temperature rose. Still he kept diving. The landing zone was right there. One more second impact, his fighter crashed directly into their largest landing ship. The explosion was massive. Fire rolled across the landing zone. Secondary explosions followed as ammunition and fuel cooked off. Tae-hyun's ejection seat fired automatically, throwing him clear of the wreckage. His parachute deployed. He floated down into the smoke. He hit the ground hard. Everything hurt. Through the smoke, he saw shapes moving toward him. Tall shapes. Not human. The aliens had survived. Some of them, at least. Tae-hyun tried to stand. His left leg would not support his weight. Broken, probably. He drew his sidearm with shaking hands. The shapes came closer. He counted 6. His weapon held 12 rounds. One of the aliens stepped out of the smoke. It was huge, maybe 3 meters tall. Its body was covered in natural armor plates. 4 arms, each holding a weapon. Its face had too many eyes. Those eyes looked at him without emotion. Tae-hyun raised his gun. The alien was faster. Something hit his hand and the weapon went flying. Another impact to his chest. He fell backward. The world spun. Hands grabbed him. Not hands exactly, claws. Everything went dark. Tae-hyun woke in a metal cell. The walls were smooth and featureless. A single light source came from the ceiling. The room was cold. He sat up slowly. His leg still hurt, but someone had set it and wrapped it. The aliens wanted him alive then. 2 other people were in the cell with him. A woman in her 30s wearing a research uniform. Another woman, younger, in maintenance coveralls. Both looked at him with fear and hope mixed together. The older woman spoke first. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I'm Jiwoo. Dr. Yoon Jiwoo, xenobiology. This is Nari. She works engineering at the colony. Are you injured?" "Legs broken. I can move." Tae-hyun looked around the cell. "How long was I out?" 2 days. They brought you here yesterday. We've been here 3 days. Jiwoo moved closer but kept her distance. "You're the pilot who crashed into their landing ship. You destroyed their ground assault carrier. The transports got away." "Good," Nari finally spoke. Her voice shook. "What do they want with us?" Jiwoo answered. "I don't know for certain, but I studied the Velkath before the war started." "That's what they're called, the Velkath Dominion. They've ruled their part of space for thousands of years. They conquer other species, make them serve. So we're slaves now?" Nari's voice rose. "Maybe. Or they might just kill us." Jiwoo looked at Tae-hyun. "You destroyed an important ship. Killed their soldiers. They might want revenge." Tae-hyun did not reply. He was studying the cell door. Solid metal. No visible lock mechanism. The walls were probably reinforced. The ceiling was too high to reach. No windows. They were on a ship, he guessed. He could feel a faint vibration through the floor. Engines. The door opened without warning. 2 Velkath entered. They were even larger up close. Their armor was dark blue, almost black. Weapons hung from their belts. Behind them came a 3rd alien, different from the others. This one wore no armor, only a long robe covered in symbols. The robed alien spoke. Its voice came through a translation device that hung around its neck. The voice sounded wrong, artificial. "I am Commander Velkaris of the Dominion Fleet. You are prisoners of war. Your colony has fallen. Your defense forces are destroyed. Your species is weak." Tae-hyun stood up despite his injured leg. He met Velkaris's many eyes without flinching. "Then why did it take you 3 weeks to win?" One of the armored aliens moved forward, raising a weapon. Velkaris raised one of his 4 hands. The guard stopped. "You have courage. That is unusual for prey." Velkaris moved closer to Tae-hyun. "You are a warrior, yes? You flew the machine that destroyed our landing carrier?" "Yes, then you will undergo the crucible." "It is our way. All captured warriors face it. The test will reveal your true nature. Every species has a breaking point. We will find yours. Jiwoo stepped forward. What kind of test? Velkaris turned his attention to her. A test of the mind, of will, of what you truly are beneath your courage. Many species have taken it. All have failed in their own way. Some die. Others break and never recover. We use the results to judge threats, to understand enemies, to decide fates. And if he refuses? Jiwoo's voice was steady, but Taehyun could hear the fear underneath. Then you die. All of you, immediately. Velkaris looked back at Taehyun. But he will not refuse. Warriors never do. They always believe they can win. Taehyun glanced at Jiwoo and Nari. Nari was crying silently. Jiwoo looked terrified but was trying to hide it. He looked back at Velkaris. When? Now. The guards moved forward and grabbed Taehyun. He did not resist. There was no point. They pulled him out of the cell. The last thing he saw before the door closed was Nari's face, pale and frightened. They took him through corridors that all looked the same. Metal walls. Strange lights. The ship was enormous. They passed other Velkath who stopped to watch. Some looked curious. Others looked amused. None looked concerned. Finally, they reached a large chamber. In the center was a chair surrounded by machines. The equipment looked medical. Velkaris gestured to the chair. Sit, Taehyun sat. The guard strapped him down. Restraints closed around his wrists, ankles, and chest. He tested them briefly. Solid. Unbreakable. Velkaris moved to a control panel. The crucible will show you things. Make you feel things. It will find what frightens you most. What hurts you most. What breaks you most. Do not try to resist. Resistance makes it worse. Every species learns this. How long does it last? Until you break. For most minutes. For the strong hours. For your species? Velkaris made a sound that might have been laughter. We shall see. Something descended from the ceiling. A helmet covered in wires and sensors. The guards placed it on Taehyun's head. It was cold against his skin. Velkaris pressed controls. The lights in the chamber dimmed. Let us see what breaks a human. Velkaris's voice was the last thing Taehyun heard before the test began. The world dissolved. Taehyun found himself standing on a street he recognized. His home colony. Before the attack. People walked past him. Normal day, peaceful. Then the siren started. The sky filled with alien ships. The attack began again, but this time he was not in his fighter. He was on the ground, helpless. He watched the ships fire, watched buildings explode, watched people burn. He tried to run toward them, but his legs would not move. He screamed, but no sound came out. The scene changed. Now he was in his old apartment. His sister was there. She looked exactly as she had the day she died. She smiled at him. Then the window exploded. Fire filled the room. She screamed his name. He tried to reach her, but something held him back. He watched her die again. The test had begun, and somewhere outside the simulation, Velkaris watched the monitors with satisfaction. Another human would break. They always did. The simulation was perfect. Too perfect. Taehyun stood in the burning apartment watching his sister die for the 10th time. Or maybe the 100th. He had lost count. Each time felt as real as the first. The heat, the smoke, her screams, the crushing guilt of being unable to save her. But somewhere in his mind a small voice remained calm. This is not real. This already happened. She is already gone. This is a test. Remember that. Just a test. The scene shifted again. Now he was in his fighter. The battle for New Busan played out around him. But this time when he saved the transport ships, they exploded anyway. Children's faces pressed against the windows as fire consumed them. The simulation made sure he could see every detail. Every face. Every moment of their deaths. Taehyun felt rage building inside him. Hot and fierce. The kind of rage that demanded action, violence, revenge. He recognized it, acknowledged it, and set it aside. Not yet, not here. This is what they want. They want me to break. To lose control. To prove I am weak. Outside the simulation chamber, Commander Velkaris studied the monitors with growing confusion. The human stress readings were extreme. Brain activity showed massive emotional response. Everything indicated psychological breakdown. But the subject's higher functions remained stable. He was not breaking. He was processing. Increase intensity, Velkaris ordered. The technician's hands moved over the controls. Commander, the levels are already at maximum safe parameters. Higher risks, permanent damage. Do it. Inside the simulation, reality fractured. Taehyun experienced multiple scenarios simultaneously. In one, he watched Earth burn. In another, he was captured and tortured while his comrades died nearby. In a third, humanity was enslaved and he was forced to watch generations suffer. The simulations layered over each other, creating a nightmare of pain and loss. His mind screamed. Every human instinct demanded escape. Fight or flight. Do something. Anything. But Taehyun had been trained for crisis response. He had learned to function when others panicked. Pain was information. Fear was a warning system. Neither controlled him. He began categorizing the scenarios. Simulation A, planetary destruction. Simulation B, personal torture. Simulation C, species enslavement. Each was designed to trigger a different response. Helplessness, rage, despair, he felt all of them. And then he began analyzing which scenarios were most likely, which threats were real, what he could actually do about them. The chamber door opened. A new figure entered, taller than Valkyris, older. The robes she wore carried more symbols, more authority. She moved to the monitors and studied them in silence. Arbitrator Thelmora. Valkyris greeted her with obvious respect. I did not expect you. The test results were flagged as anomalous. I came to observe. Her voice was deeper than Valkyris's, more controlled. How long has he been under? 6 hours. Far longer than any human should survive. The psychological stress readings are beyond what most species can endure. But his cognitive functions refuse to degrade. Thelmora studied the monitors closely. His emotional centers are fully engaged. He is experiencing the trauma. But his analytical functions are increasing. He is not shutting down. He is adapting. Impossible. The Crucible is designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities. It has broken warriors from 17 species. No one adapts to it. Clearly someone is. Thelmora moved closer to the chamber viewport. She could see Taehyun strapped in the chair. His body showed signs of extreme stress, sweat, rapid breathing, muscle tension. But his eyes moved in patterns that suggested active thought rather than panic. What do you know about human evolution? They are weak. Soft bodies. No natural weapons. No significant physical advantages. Yet they built spacecraft and weapons capable of destroying our carrier. Weakness does not explain that. Thelmora continued watching Taehyun pull up their planetary data. I want to see their world. The technician brought up Earth's information. Images of the planet appeared on secondary screens. Thelmora studied them. Oceans, continents, weather patterns. Then she requested biological data. What she saw made her pause. Their world contains thousands of predator species, many larger and stronger than humans. Yet humans are the dominant species. She pulled up more data. They evolved alongside creatures with natural weapons, claws, fangs, venom, speed, strength. Humans had none of these. They survived through persistence, tool use, and the ability to continue functioning under stress that would kill most prey species. Inside the simulation, Taehyun faced a new scenario. This one was different, more subtle. He was back in the holding cell. Jiwoo and Nari were there, but they were not really them. He could tell. The simulation was getting desperate, trying new approaches. It showed him a future where he broke and betrayed them, where his weakness led to their deaths. He rejected the scenario immediately, not because it was impossible, but because he could prevent it. The simulation wanted him to feel helpless, to believe he had no control. But Taehyun had learned long ago that helplessness was often a choice. Even in the worst situations, some control remained. Some choice, some action. The scenarios began cycling faster. Childhood trauma, combat losses, personal failures. Each designed to find the breaking point, the thing that would shatter his will. But Taehyun had already lived through the worst day of his life. He had watched his sister die and been unable to stop it. He had carried that weight for years. The simulation could show it to him again, but it could not make it worse than reality already was. 7 hours. 8 hours. The test continued beyond any expected duration. Valkyris grew increasingly agitated. Thelmora remained calm, but her interest was clear. This was unprecedented. Finally, the simulation presented its ultimate scenario. Taehyun stood before a choice. Save 1,000 colonists or save his sister. The simulation made it clear he could only choose one. It froze time and forced him to decide. Most species would break here, unable to make the choice, paralyzed by impossible moral weight. Taehyun chose the colonists. Immediately, without hesitation. His sister was already dead, had been for years. The colonists might still be saved. The logic was simple. The emotional cost was enormous. But the choice was clear. He watched his sister die again and felt the weight of it. Then he moved forward to save the others. The simulation ended abruptly. The monitors showed completion. Subject survived full test duration. Psychological profile stable. Recommendation, extreme caution. The restraints released. The helmet lifted. Taehyun opened his eyes. The chamber lights were too bright. He blinked and tried to focus. His body felt like it had been running for days. Every muscle ached. His head pounded. But he was aware, present, functional. Velkaris approached. His expression was difficult to read, but something in his posture suggested displeasure. "You have completed the crucible. The results are recorded." Taehyun's throat was dry. He tried to speak, but no words came. He swallowed and tried again. "Did I pass?" "The crucible is not a test one passes. It is a measure of breaking points." Velkaris moved closer. "You experienced maximum psychological stress. You felt fear, pain, loss, rage. All the emotions we induced were detected. According to our metrics, you should have broken. You should have shut down or lost cognitive function. Yet you maintained analysis throughout. The test found no breaking point, so I passed." "No." Velkaris's voice carried contempt. "You failed. You demonstrated that your species feels everything but does nothing. You are prey that pretends to be predator. You endured pain but took no action, weak as we suspected. The crucible reveals truth, and your truth is weakness disguised as strength." The guards moved forward to take Taehyun back to his cell, but he remained seated, looking at Velkaris, at Thelmora, at all the Velkath in the chamber, technicians, scientists, soldiers, all watching him with varying degrees of contempt and curiosity. Taehyun spoke quietly. His voice was hoarse but steady. "If I failed, then why are you all still alive?" The chamber fell silent. The shuttle docked at Earth Station 7 3 days after leaving Velkath space. Military police were waiting. They escorted Taehyun, Jiwoo, and Nari through security corridors while soldiers stared. Word had already spread. The pilot who crashed into an alien warship. The survivors of alien captivity. Heroes or warnings depending on who you asked. Captain Park Min-seok met them in a secure briefing room. He was older than Taehyun expected. Maybe 50. Gray in his hair, lines around his eyes. The face of someone who had seen too many bad situations. He did not look happy. "Lieutenant Kang, Dr. Yoon, Miss Nari, I'm glad you're alive." His tone suggested he was not entirely sure that was a good thing. "We need to debrief you separately. Everything you saw, heard, experienced. We need to know what we're facing." The debriefing took 12 hours. Different officers asking the same questions in different ways. What did the ship look like? How many Velkath did you see? What weapons did they carry? What did they say? What did they do? Tell us about the test. Tell us everything. Finally, they were allowed to rest. But sleep did not come easily. Taehyun lay in his assigned quarters staring at the ceiling. Behind his eyes, the crucible played on repeat, not because it still controlled him, but because he knew it was just the beginning. The next morning, Captain Min-seok called them back to the briefing room. This time he was not alone. A dozen senior officers sat around the table. The atmosphere was tense. Min-seok began without preamble. "Dr. Yoon, your analysis of the Velkath psychology. Present it." Jiwoo stood and activated a display screen. She had spent the night preparing. The Velkath Dominion has ruled their sector for 12,000 years. They have conquered 17 species. Their psychology is based on dominance hierarchies. Strong rules weak, predator consumes prey. They test captured warriors using something called the Crucible, a psychological simulation designed to find breaking points. One of the officers interrupted. "Lieutenant Kang survived this test. That makes us look strong, doesn't it? They'll leave us alone." "No." Jiwoo's voice was firm. "It makes us unpredictable. The Velkath understand strength and weakness. They know how to deal with both. But Taehyun showed them something they don't understand. A species that feels everything they threw at him but doesn't break. That doesn't fit their categories." It makes us a question mark. And the Dominion does not like questions. Another officer spoke up. So what's your assessment? Will they attack? Eventually, yes, they'll debate. They'll observe. But ultimately, they'll conclude that an unpredictable species is a threat, and they eliminate threats. Jiwoo pulled up data on the screen. Population numbers, fleet sizes, technological comparisons. The numbers were not encouraging. We have 12 colonies, 3 billion people total. They have thousands of worlds, trillions of citizens. In a conventional war, we lose badly. The room fell silent. Captain Minseok leaned back in his chair. Then we don't fight a conventional war. We do what humans do best. We adapt, we survive. We make conquests so expensive that they decide we're not worth the effort. Over the following weeks, the strategy took shape. Human colonies began fortifying, not with massive weapons or fleets they could not afford, but with layers of defense, evacuation protocols, hidden supply caches, training programs. Every colonist learned basic combat. Every building had emergency shelters. Every ship had escape plans. Nari found herself reassigned from maintenance to weapons development. Her practical engineering knowledge was valuable. She worked with other civilians and soldiers to create simple defensive systems. Her breakthrough came 3 months after their return. Heat-seeking mines, she explained to the development committee. Simple, cheap, we can make thousands of them. They detect body heat but ignore human thermal signatures. Any Velcath that steps near one triggers it. We can blanket entire landing zones, make every invasion a nightmare. The design was approved. Production began immediately. Within 4 months, every human colony had defensive mine systems. Nari's innovation spread her name throughout human space. She became a symbol. Ordinary people could fight back, could make a difference, could be dangerous. Taehyun was assigned to training duty. His experience with the Crucible made him valuable. He taught colonial defense forces about psychological resilience, how to function under stress, how to keep thinking when instinct screamed to panic or rage. The Velcath expect enemies to break or go berserk, he told his first training class. They understand violent emotion. They don't understand cold calculation under pressure. That's our advantage. Not strength, not technology. The ability to keep thinking when everything is falling apart. His methods were harsh. Simulations that pushed trainees to their limits. Scenarios designed to induce panic, then teaching them to breathe through it, to analyze while afraid, to act despite pain. The training was grueling but effective. Graduation rates were high. Failure to apply the lessons in real combat was low. 6 months after their return, intelligence reported Velcath fleet movements. Ships gathering at the border of Dominion space. Not raiding parties. Full battle groups, thousands of vessels. The watching period was ending. The decision had been made. Captain Minseok called an emergency meeting. Taehyun, Jiwoo, and Nari attended along with senior military leadership. The mood was grim. They're coming, Minseok said simply. Our scouts confirmed 3,000 warships assembling. That's more than enough to overwhelm our entire defense fleet. They'll hit our outer colonies first, test our responses, then push toward Earth. How long do we have? Jiwoo asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. They're being methodical. That gives us time to finish preparations. Minseok looked around the table. We're not going to win. Let me be clear about that. We cannot defeat the Dominion in open warfare, but we can survive. We can make them bleed for every meter. We can show them that conquering humanity is not worth the cost. An admiral spoke up. What about diplomacy? Can we negotiate? Jiwoo shook her head. The Velcath don't negotiate with species they consider inferior. They offer submission or destruction. No middle ground. We showed them we can't be easily broken. Now they'll try to prove we can be. Then we fight. Minseok's voice carried finality. Every colony, every ship, every person. We show them what humans are. Not the strongest, not the smartest, but the ones who refuse to quit, ever. The orders went out. Civilian evacuations to core worlds. Military assets deployed to outer colonies. Supply lines reinforced. Communication networks hardened. Humanity prepared for war the way humans always had. Not with confidence of victory, but with determination to survive. Taehyun stood in the observation deck of Earth Station 7, watching defense ships maneuver. Nari joined him. She looked tired but determined. Her hands were stained with machine grease. She had been working non-stop on mine production. Do you think we can win? she asked quietly. No, Taehyun answered honestly, but I think we can survive. And that's what matters. The Velkath think in terms of victory and defeat, dominance and submission. We think in terms of endurance. They want to conquer us. We just want to still be here when they're done trying. That doesn't sound like winning. For humans, survival is winning. We've been doing it for 200,000 years, against predators stronger than us, environments harsher than us, diseases that should have killed us. We're still here because we're too stubborn to die. The Velkath are about to learn what that means. 3 weeks later, the Dominion fleet arrived at the border of human space. 3,000 ships, weapons that could crack planets, soldiers who had never lost a war. Commander Velkaris stood on the bridge of his flagship and transmitted a message to the nearest human colony. Surrender now and be spared. Resist and be destroyed. You have 1 hour to respond. Captain Minseok received the message on Earth. He considered for exactly 10 seconds. Then he transmitted his response. 2 words, simple, clear, unmistakably human. Come try. The war began. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then every Velkath in the chamber understood what Taehyun meant. He had endured 8 hours of the worst psychological torture their science could produce. 8 hours of watching everyone he loved die. Of experiencing his deepest fears. Of facing scenarios designed to drive any rational being into rage or madness or death. And his first thought upon emerging was not to attack. Not to scream. Not to break down. It was to make a point. A calculated point that cut through their assumptions like a blade. If he had truly broken, he would be a threat. If he had truly failed their test, he would have lost control. But he sat there calm and coherent, surrounded by the beings who had tortured him, and he had not hurt anyone. That was not weakness. That was restraint. And restraint implied choice, which implied capability. Arbitrator Thelmora was the first to respond. She moved forward and placed one of her hands on Velkaris's shoulder. A gesture that clearly meant stand down. She studied Taehyun with what might have been respect. An excellent question. Commander, return him to his cell. I will consult with the High Council. Velkaris looked like he wanted to argue, but he simply gestured to the guards. They moved forward more carefully this time, as if Taehyun might actually be dangerous. They took him out of the chamber and back through the corridors. This time, the other Velkath who saw them did not look amused. They looked uncertain. Back in the cell, Jiwoo and Nari rushed forward as soon as the door closed. Nari was crying. Jiwoo's hand shook as she checked Taehyun over. Are you hurt? Can you hear me? What did they do? Taehyun sat down slowly. Everything ached. His mind felt raw, but he was functional. I'm okay. They tested me. Some kind of psychological simulation. It's over now. Did you pass? Nari's voice was small. They said I failed, but I don't think they're sure anymore. Jiwoo sat across from him. Her scientific mind was already working. Tell me everything. What did they show you? What did they measure? How long did it last? Taehyun described the test as best he could. The scenarios, the layered simulations, the attempts to find his breaking point. Jiwoo listened with growing alarm and fascination. 8 hours, she said finally. You were under for 8 hours. And you came out stable. That should not be possible. Why not? Because the Velkath evolved as apex predators. They think in terms of dominance hierarchies. Strong or weak. Predator or prey. Their test is designed to identify which you are. If you're prey, you shut down from fear. If you're predator, you go into a rage state. Either way, you become predictable, controllable. But humans aren't either of those things. Taehyun was beginning to understand. Exactly. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey until it collapsed. We tracked wounded animals for days. We kept going when any sane creature would stop. Our psychology is built around endurance, around continuing to function even under extreme stress. The Velkath have never encountered that before. Nari looked between them. So what does that mean? Are they going to let us go? Jiwoo shook her head. I don't know. But Taehyun just showed them that humans can't be easily broken or predicted. He made us visible. Made us a question mark. That could save us, or it could make them decide to eliminate the threat before it grows. In the High Council chamber, Arbitrator Thelmora presented her findings. The council consisted of 12 of the oldest and most powerful Velkath. They had ruled the Dominion for centuries. They did not like surprises. The human subject survived the full duration of the crucible with cognitive functions intact. This has never occurred in the test's 3,000-year history. Analysis of his responses suggests a psychology fundamentally different from any species we have encountered. One of the council members leaned forward. Different how? Humans do not respond to stress like prey or predators. They are neither. Their evolutionary history shows a species that survived by outlasting threats. They hunted by persistence. They won conflicts through attrition. Their psychology allows them to experience extreme stress while maintaining tactical thinking. The crucible measures breaking points. It found none. Another council member spoke. One individual is not a species. Perhaps he is an anomaly. I accessed their historical records. Human history is filled with examples of this behavior. Soldiers who fought for years without breaking. Explorers who survived impossible conditions. Civilians who endured occupations that would have shattered other species. It is not an anomaly. It is their baseline. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the eldest member spoke. What is your recommendation, arbitrator? We should release them. Observe them. Study them further. Humanity is either irrelevant or dangerous. We need more data to determine which. An aggressive response now might trigger exactly the conflict we wish to avoid. Commander Velkaris stood from his position below the council seats. With respect, arbitrator, I disagree. Humans are weak physically. Their technology is primitive. Their numbers are small. If they represent a threat, we should eliminate it now before they develop further. Mercy toward potential enemies is how empires fall. And blind aggression is how empires overextend, Delmora replied. We have ruled this sector for 12,000 years by knowing when to fight and when to watch. The crucible was meant to give us that knowledge. It gave us an answer we did not expect. That does not mean we should ignore it. The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached a compromise. The humans would be released with a warning. The Dominion would observe their development. If humanity proved dangerous, action would be taken. If not, they could be ignored. It was a middle path. Safe, cautious, wrong. 3 days later, Tai Hyun, Ji-woo, and Na-ri were taken to a shuttle. No explanation. No farewell. Just guards escorting them to a small ship and sealing them inside. The ship launched automatically. Preset coordinates. They were being sent home. Na-ri cried with relief. Ji-woo looked thoughtful and worried. Taehyun stared out the viewport at the massive Velkath flagship growing smaller behind them. This isn't over, he said quietly. Ji-woo joined him at the viewport. No, we passed their test by surviving it. But now they know we exist. No, we can't be easily broken. That makes us either irrelevant or threatening. And I don't think they've decided which yet. So what do? We go home. We warn everyone. We prepare. Ji-woo's voice was steady. You gave us time by making them pause, by making them question their assumptions. But they're still the Dominion. Still the strongest power in this part of space. And we're still just humans. Just humans, Taehyun repeated. He thought about the crucible. About 8 hours of hell. About emerging with one thought clear in his mind. Maybe that's enough. The shuttle continued toward human space. Behind them, the Dominion watched. Velkaris began quietly preparing for war, convinced that humanity must be destroyed before they became a problem. Thelmore continued her research, trying to understand what humans truly were. The High Council waited and watched. None of them understood yet. The crucible had not been testing whether humans could be broken. It had been revealing that breaking humans required something the Dominion had never needed before. Not just force, not just fear. Something more, something that might not exist at all. And in that gap between what the Dominion thought they knew and what they actually faced, humanity would find their chance. Not to win, not yet, but to survive. And for humans, survival was just another word for victory. The first colony to fall was New Seoul. It was the outermost human settlement. 2,000 colonists. Minimal defenses. The Velkath expected it to surrender within hours. It took 3 weeks. Commander Velkaris watched from orbit as his forces landed. The humans had evacuated most civilians, but several hundred remained. Defenders. They had no chance. His ground troops outnumbered them 10 to 1. His weapons were superior. His soldiers were experienced conquerors. This should be simple. The first landing zone exploded. Nari's mines. Dozens of Velkath died in seconds. The survivors pushed forward and hit more mines. Then automated gun turrets opened fire from hidden positions. Then the human defenders attacked from unexpected angles and retreated before the Velkath could respond. Every building was trapped. Every street was a kill zone. Every room could hide an ambush. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like people defending their homes. Because that is exactly what they were. Velkaris increased the assault. More troops. Heavy weapons. Orbital bombardment. The colony was destroyed piece by piece. But destruction was not the same as conquest. The humans retreated into tunnels and bunkers. They emerged to attack and vanished again. They used weapons scavenged from fallen Velkath. They rigged explosives from mining equipment. They never stopped fighting. On the 18th day, Velkaris committed his elite guard, the best warriors in the Dominion. They cleared the last human positions in brutal close combat. The colony finally fell silent. Every defender was dead, but the cost was staggering. 200 Velkath ships destroyed, 1,500 ground troops dead, thousands more injured. 3 weeks of effort for one minor colony. Velkaris looked at the casualty reports with growing unease. At this rate, conquering all 12 human colonies would cost half his fleet. And the humans had barely begun to fight back seriously. On Earth, Captain Minseok received the news. New Sol was gone, but they had bought time. 3 weeks. Time for other colonies to finish preparations. Time for evacuation. Time to learn from their tactics and improve. They're learning we don't fight fair, Jiwoo said. She was analyzing Velkath combat patterns from battlefield recordings. They expect honor, courage, direct confrontation. We're giving them ambushes, traps, and guerrilla warfare. Whatever works, Minseok replied. How long until they reach the core colonies? At their current pace? Years. They're having to secure each colony completely before moving on. Our resistance is forcing them into slow, methodical conquest. That's not what they're used to. They conquer fast and move on. We're making them grind. Good, let them grind. Every day they spend fighting is a day we spend preparing. The second colony fell in 4 weeks. The third in 5. Each battle lasted longer than the one before. The humans learned from defeats. Improved tactics. Better defenses. More creative attacks. They began targeting Velkath supply lines. Ships carrying reinforcements were ambushed. Communication relays were destroyed. The Velkath found themselves fighting not just at the front lines but everywhere. Taehyun led several of these raids. Small teams of fighters hitting Velkath weak points and vanishing. His training and psychological resilience proved valuable. The Velkath tried intimidation, torture of prisoners, shows of overwhelming force. None of it worked. Human raiders simply adapted and continued fighting. After 6 months of war, Velkaris called for reinforcements. The High Council was reluctant. The war was supposed to be quick, a demonstration of power. Instead, it was becoming a quagmire. But they sent the ships, another 1,000 vessels, more troops. Surely this would be enough. It was not enough. The humans did something unexpected. They stopped defending colonies and started attacking Velkath bases, raids on supply depots, sabotage of command ships, assassination attempts on officers. The war stopped being about territory and became about attrition. The Velkath could not maintain occupation when every occupied world required constant military presence. When every supply convoy needed escorts. When every officer needed bodyguards. 1 year into the war, Velkaris had conquered 5 colonies at the cost of 1,500 warships and 50,000 troops. The remaining 7 colonies were more fortified than ever. Earth itself had become a fortress. The war was not just unwinnable. It was unsustainable. Reports began reaching the Dominion from other conquered species. Small rebellions, questions about Velkath strength. If humans could resist this long, perhaps others could too. The war was not just costing ships and soldiers. It was costing reputation, authority, fear, arbitrator. Thelmora requested permission to approach human leadership with peace terms. The High Council debated for weeks. Finally, they agreed. The war had proven its point in the worst possible way. Humans were not weak. They were dangerous. Not because they were strong, but because they would never stop fighting. Thelmora's ship arrived at Earth under a flag of truce. It was not attacked, but it was tracked by hundreds of weapons. The message was clear. We can kill you anytime. We are choosing not to. Remember that. She met with Captain Minseok, Jiwoo, and Taehyun in a neutral conference room. The arbitrator looked older than Taehyun remembered. The war had cost everyone, The Dominion wishes to end hostilities, Thelmora began without preamble. We will withdraw from occupied colonies, return prisoners, recognize human sovereignty. In exchange, you will cease attacks on our forces and territory. Minseok leaned back in his chair. Just like that? After 2 years of war, you want to walk away? Yes, why? Thelmora was silent for a moment. Then she spoke with what might have been respect. Because we made a mistake. We assumed humanity would follow patterns we understood. Submit or fight until broken. You did neither. You simply continued. Every battle cost us more than we gained. Every victory was temporary. Every occupation required permanent military presence. You were not trying to win. You were trying to make winning meaningless, Jiwoo spoke up. What about Commander Velkaris? He started this war. He won't accept peace. Commander Velkaris has been removed from command. His reputation is destroyed. He promised quick victory and delivered endless war. The High Council has decided that humanity is not worth the cost of conquest. Thelmora looked at each of them. You have earned something rare. Our respect. And our caution. The Dominion will not bother you again. Unless you bother us, Taehyun finally spoke. What guarantee do we have? You could rebuild and attack again. No guarantee. Only logic. This war has shown us that humans cannot be conquered efficiently. Destroying you would cost more than any benefit. The Dominion is pragmatic. We do not waste resources on unprofitable ventures. You have made yourselves unprofitable. That's it? We're too annoying to conquer? Minseok almost laughed. Yes, exactly that. Thelmora did not seem offended. You asked in the test chamber why we were still alive after Taehyun had failed. I understand now. You did not fail our test. We failed to understand yours. The Crucible measures breaking points. You have none we can find. That makes you not weak. It makes you something we cannot predict or control. And we do not conquer what we cannot control. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Terms were agreed. Borders established. Trade possibilities discussed cautiously. The Velkath withdrew from occupied colonies and left human space, slowly at first, then faster as they realized humans would not attack during withdrawal. A strange trust formed, not friendship, but mutual understanding that neither side wanted more war. When the last Velkath ship left human territory, there were no celebrations. Just exhaustion and relief, and the knowledge that 5 colonies were destroyed, hundreds of thousands dead, countless more injured or displaced. The cost of survival had been enormous. Taehyun stood in the same observation deck where he had watched the war begin. Nari joined him again. She looked different now, older, harder. The war had changed everyone. We survived, she said quietly. Yeah, we did. Was it worth it? Taehyun thought about that. About his sister. About all the people who died in the war. About the colonies that would need decades to rebuild. About the children who grew up knowing only conflict. I don't know, but it was necessary. They were going to conquer or destroy us. We showed them that neither option was as simple as they thought. Maybe that saves other species in the future. Maybe it just postpones the problem. I don't know. What do we do now? We rebuild. We remember. We stay ready. Taehyun watched ships moving in the distance. Construction vessels heading to damaged colonies. Medical ships bringing supplies. The work of peace was beginning. The Velkath learned we don't break. That's good. But other threats will come. Other species. Other challenges. We need to be ready. Will we always be fighting? Maybe. Humans have always been fighting something. Nature, predators, each other. The galaxy. Maybe that's what we are. The species that survives because we refuse to stop. I don't know if that's good or bad. But it's what we are. Across the galaxy, the story spread. Humans, the species that survived the Velkath, not through strength, not through technology, through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Other species began watching humanity with new interest, some with respect, some with caution, some with fear. And somewhere in Dominion space, in an archive of failed conquests, a new entry was added. Species human, status dangerous, recommendation, avoid, note,